I've gone to war for my country. I know what it means to take men's lives and put it on the line. When you go to war, it should be for the legitimate national defense, defending your country.
Welcome back. That was former UN weapons inspector in Iraq, Scott Ritter, who proclaimed before the war that Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction. This week he published an op-ed on the Al Jazeera website claiming the U.S. has already begun another war, this time with Iran. Scott Ritter joins me now. Scott Ritter, thanks for coming on.
It's a pleasure.
It seems to me that the headline of your piece and maybe even the thesis of your piece is wrong. We're not at war with Iran, or am I misreading it?
Well, let's start off with the precedent that's already been established by the Bush administration when we talk about Iraq. If you recall, the president loudly proclaimed in September and October of 2002 that he had no intention of waging war with Iraq, that he was seeking a diplomatic solution, and he maintained that premise all the way up till his presentation to the American people in the middle of March, when he publicly proclaimed that American troops were going into Iraq. We now know that the president signed a covert finding in spring 2002 authorizing the CIA and the United States military special operations forces to engage in direct action and strategic reconnaissance operations inside Iraq. That's a warlike
Right, it's warlike. It's also, it could be read, and I think it accurately is read, as a preparation for war, and the things you cite in this piece are also preparations for war. How are we at war with Iraq?
No, Tucker, when you violate the sovereignty, when you violate the territorial integrity of a sovereign nation, that is a warlike action. When the commander-in-chief authorizes either the paramilitary arm of the clandestine services of the intelligence community of the United States or special operations forces to engage in activities that will lead to the removal of a regime, that is war. It's not a declared war, but it is war.
Well,
and this is what happened with Iraq, and this is what is happening today with Iran.
It's also, Scott, what happened with the Soviet Union. For 40 years, we prepared for war with the Soviet Union. We mobilized the entire U.S. government to prepare for war with the Soviet Union and never had a war with the Soviet Union. You don't mention in your piece, though, reasons why we might fear Iran, its nuclear program, acts of terror it has sponsored. I mean, you will concede that we have something to fear from Iran, don't we?
Well, no, nothing that is threatening to the national survival of the United States. Let's take the alleged nuclear weapons program. I don't think the Bush administration has sustained any allegation it has made pertaining to Iran possessing a nuclear weapons program with fact. They've used defector information, and I think every American should have an alarm bells sounding loud when we have the Bush administration putting forward defectors to make their case. There is no facts. The Bush administration cites an Iranian nuclear energy program that dates back to the 1970s when the Ford administration, with Dick Cheney serving as the White House chief of staff and Donald Rumsfeld
but wait a second, Scott,
saying that this is a legitimate program.
I know, but Scott,
it's the same program today.
That's right. I mean, Iran has conceded, has admitted that it has a nuclear program. It claims it's for nuclear energy. Why would a country awash in oil have a nuclear energy program? It wouldn't. This obviously.
I'll go back to the reasons that the Shah of Iran used in 1976 in getting the Ford administration, again with Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, agreeing that Iran cannot allow itself to be prisoner to a single source of energy, given the fact that it had the then Soviet Union on one flank and it had Iraq on another. Iran had to have an alternative energy supply, and you know the United States government.
That's a very generous reading of Iran's motives.
Said it was a good thing. So now we have Iran with United States forces in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Azerbaijan, and you don't think that the same strategic impetus that applied in 1976 applies today?
Well, I think the idea that a country just swimming in petroleum needs a nuclear weapons program going a bit far. But let me ask you about your piece, though. Pretty intemperate, pretty over
nuclear energy program. I never said anything about a nuclear weapons program.
I meant nuclear energy program. Yeah, pretty over-the-top piece. You accuse the White House, what you describe as a neoconservative cabal, of committing crimes against Iran and essentially waging this war that no one has noticed somehow. You wrote this on the Al Jazeera website. This is fanning the flames of paranoia in the Middle East, don't you think, among people who already think that our government is run by Israel and that we're planning on colonizing the Middle East. This can't be good for America, can it? Why'd you run it on the Al Jazeera website?
Well, because the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, and other mainstream media outlets in the United States won't run a piece like that.
I'll tell you exactly why, Scott Ritter, because in here you accuse the CIA of setting off bombs against civilians in Iran this month,
Tucker Carlson,
for which you have no evidence.
With first and last name. The CIA today is working. Its paramilitary operatives are working in MEK, Mujahideen al-Khalq bases in Iraq. Now remember, the MEK is still listed by the State Department of the United States of America as a terrorist organization. The CIA is working with the MEK to send MEK operatives into Iran to carry out reconnaissance, intelligence, and direct action. Now you tell me why we as Americans should feel that this is a good thing.
That's an extremely heavy claim to claim that the U.S. government is killing civilians indiscriminately with bombs in Iran when you offer not a single shred of evidence. It's an outrage that you put that in any op-ed anywhere, much less on Al Jazeera. Fortunately, we're out of time. Scott Ritter, thanks for joining us. Coming up, a Washington columnist thinks Dick Cheney and his cohorts lied about Iraq to themselves. That would be alarming, and we'll discuss